Welcome to the 14th recording of Podcasters. Today with Carla Verwijmeren and Ian Fitzpatrick. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, I would like to know, who are you? Well, I just said your names, and what do you do? Ladies first.
Shall I start? Yeah. My name is Carla Verwijmeren and I'm a partner at Y Digital. Y Digital is an AI company and we specialize in everything that is non-linear and a more complex language understanding.
Okay. Ian?
My name is Ian Fitzpatrick. I'm the CTO and Managing Director at Y Digital. I've been building AI solutions now for about 7 years and productionizing them. Prior to that, I spent 10 years in academia, did a PhD in neurolinguistics at the Max Planck Institute in Nijmegen. And that's where I developed my enthusiasm for AI.
And now your name it makes sense, but your accent is British.
I am British.
You are British, yes. But your Dutch is fabulous.
Well, I've been living here for 30 odd years now, so
okay. So you have a good excuse to speak proper Dutch.
Can compete with it, yeah.
No, you don't have to, because, Okay, now why digital? Actually, the question is why digital? You write it with an Y, but what does your company do besides AI so general? So could you be a bit more specific?
Yes, well,
because there's a reason I asked you guys to come.
The reason why, indeed.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the reason. So the company name is Y Digital. All partners, we have all been working in the industry for many years, and we saw there were a lot of actually solutions which we thought, well, probably it could be more intelligent or better. So we were a little bit frustrated about what the companies were doing. But on the other hand, we also see that if you start with a company and you start building solutions, then it's easy to make a proof of concept or make a MVP. But if you really want to introduce this or implement this into your real business, then you have to think further than just a starting point. So when we start with why, we want to know why the company is doing it, what's the ambition of the company, but also to have a broader look about more years. Okay, what is the investment going to be, but also what are the revenues going to be? Because we want to talk about the implementation as well before even starting, because we don't want to make just kind of nice innovation projects and then stop again and do the same thing at another company.
And digital is not the objective and should never be, right? So our payoff is empowering humans, and that's exactly what we want to do. So we want to use the tools that we have at our disposal, the AI, the machine learning, other types of IT solutions and things like that, ultimately to support humans, be it the end customers or the people in the organization.
Both.
Or both, indeed, both at the same time. The people who want to have a good customer experience, or the people who are doing repetitive work, which can easily be supported, not supplanted, but supported by AI.
That's an interesting thought. Of course, you promote voice a lot.
Yes.
So that's what triggered me, because we talk a lot here about, of course, the chatbots where we use text, and we haven't talked about voice. So you're the first one who has a lot of knowledge about it, because that's the point. There's not so much people around that know their way around voice, and I think it's also it's different than text. It's also a conversation, but it's different.
Yeah.
So maybe you could take us on a little journey why it is different. And maybe the perception is that it's maybe hard. Maybe it's not hard, but just, help us.
So my passion for voice, I think it was 5 years ago when Google Assistant arrived in the Netherlands. And that was also because before I started, I worked at Centraal Beheer Achmea.
It's a Dutch insurance company.
Dutch insurance, right? But I saw that, the Google Assistant was coming into the Netherlands, and I had a master in Rijksuniversiteit Groningen about conversational AI for e-commerce. Okay. And then I thought, well, I have knowledge about conversational AI and Google Assistant is coming, so let's start my own company. And that's what's called the Smart Voices, which was my first company.
That's where we had our first contact.
Yes, that's true, yeah. So I was really interested in, what is the voice as an interface? What can it mean to people? And how can you as a company make it work for you? And it's definitely different from text, although you can reuse a lot of the technologies the fundamental technologies you can reuse. But there's, for example, in voice you have to think about, okay, how does my company sound? Or in voice you cannot use emoticons, for example, which you can easily use in a chatbot.
Or buttons.
Or buttons, right? So in voice you have to, more than in text, I think, have to think about, okay, how is this user experience going to be in such a way that the customer is actually happy with the results. And I really love, and Google Assistant, I think, also didn't work out the way probably we thought of, we expected 5 years ago. So because even Google is going to stop with Google Actions as of June next year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they will be selling the Google Assistant and the smart speakers, but people use it for example, to ask what is the latest news, or
what's the weather?
Is there a traffic jam when I go to Amsterdam, or that kind of stuff. So, but actually talking to companies, saying, okay, Google, I want to talk to Albert Heijn, or I want to talk to, say, hey Google, open Rabobank. This feature is now going to be stopped by Google. Yeah.
And Alexa is going to still do that?
Yeah, Alexa skills is still moving forward further.
Okay.
But what I also thought then, okay, so I have experienced with voice, but then for Google Assistant, but how can you reuse this kind of technology in other channels? And that's obviously then the call channel. So that's, I think, also where we see now the fast growing business line in Y Digital as well. So how can we help contact centers to actually automate in an intelligent way the contacts that they have there? And that's, also from a business value point of view, it's very interesting, because if you can automate your contact for 10, 20, or perhaps 30%.
Wow.
That's a really great use case for companies to invest in.
Especially if you can't hire any staff, or you don't have the money. If there's no people available, or you don't have the money, then.
Yeah, I agree.
But I imagine it's not cheap.
No, well, it's not cheap. I always like to see it as an investment, because you have to pay, but you get something in return as well.
So we're talking about value.
Right.
Very good. Both of you, maybe a little bit closer to the microphone.
Sure.
But there's if you've watched the previous podcasts, you might have heard me ask the question to certain people: why is it that we don't combine voice and text into one platform or one solution? And what I find is, I hope I'm not too harsh, but it's sort of discriminatory that we design our chatbots, especially in text. But if you're illiterate and you do speak Dutch, or if you're blind, there's no way you can communicate with the bot. Whereas, why don't we have a choice? Do you want text or voice? I understand it becomes more expensive, but it's more user-friendly.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid question, and I think that the technology over the last couple of years has really matured to the stage where this is really possible. It requires a little bit of a different approach than what we're used to. So, Carla said already, voice and text are different in terms of the user experience. They're different in terms of the nature of the language when people interact. I mean, speech is much more, or rather, text is much more composed.
Yeah.
So people have the time to think out, okay, how am I going to write something? And you notice in speech already, there are hesitations. There are, sentences just don't work and are often even ungrammatical. Compared to what you would see in text. So it's a slightly different animal. And the potential is there, and that has been very much our approach, to not think of these channels as, well, consider them as channels, right? Voice and text. Yeah. Channels into the same underlying knowledge base. And I think that is really where we as an industry should strive to go towards, to think of getting the knowledge of an organization to the different channels, rather than thinking, okay, I now have to compose all of the knowledge of my organization into a whole spaghetti of different intents and scripts, which I tie together. And just indeed focus on the knowledge which you want to get to the channels.
And enlighten me with an example how that would work in an organization. Just some practical example or a use case. Maybe it's not there yet, but you would think of, okay, in this kind of organization, that would be a great use case and a great business case.
Well, I think any organization in which contact with customers is multi-channel. And there are many,
Insurance
right? So
companies, for
insurance companies, but also sort of governmental organizations.
They're really fast with innovating.
Yeah, well,
Your laughter explains it all.
well, I mean, we do work for governmental organizations as well. So, I mean, the need is acute there, right? So that just the volumes of customer contacts that they have to deal with, multi-channel, email, WhatsApp, voice in call center.
Total overload.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you see is that the first tendency of organizations is to replicate or try to set up a new solution for a new channel. And that means a lot of double work. It means a lot of double maintenance. And ultimately, I don't think that is a scalable way of doing it. So I think you really need to go towards a central knowledge base indeed, and then make it available via these different channels. And that's very much the philosophy that we adopted in building our AI platform at White Digital.
Yes, because you're saying now our AI platform. Yeah. When we talked before, you told me you created or built something new. Enlighten me. It's called Ellie. Does that have a reason, like White Digital, or just a random name?
Yeah, no, it's not a random name. Actually, we had a kind
so.
of competition internally, so everybody could give their suggestions.
You didn't ask Ellie to create a name?
No, we didn't.
You could have.
Yes.
Yeah, true. But no, it's so the idea of Ellie is that it's your ally. It's your the person who's next to.
It's called ally, not Ellie.
Yeah, no, we say Ellie, but it's kind of phonetical. You could also say ally, and it's all Y, which is also. So we have different reasons actually for choosing this name. But I think the main thing of Ellie is that she can actually help companies bring knowledge to the different channels in a very effective way. So because now we see companies struggling with the maintenance of their chatbots. So for example, they have a lot of flows that have been designed, and when something changes, for example, when you are a health insurance company and in the end of the year you have to change all your pricing, then you have to do this in all those different channels. And the idea that we had is, okay, can we actually make a knowledge graph with where you actually in a central point have your price, and then reuse it in any channel that is connected via Ellie. So it might be your WhatsApp, or it might be your call center.
So a single source of truth.
Yes. Right, yeah. And then obviously it still is important that you adjust your content to the different channels, because in WhatsApp you can only use a certain amount of letters, and that's a different in the call center, for example. So that's something that you have to, but that's actually the second layer, so not the first layer. So the first layer is your knowledge in your company, and then see, okay, how can I actually bring this to different channels? And then if something changes, you can actually change it just in the central part, and it will be changed in any channel that follows up the question.
But how is that different from other AI solutions or data? Basically, it's AI on a database.
Well, it is actually vastly different. And we really consider it a new paradigm. So
tell us.
So one of our convictions is that language isn't, or conversation isn't, a medium that you could script out exhaustively. And ultimately what you see is with the current generation of chat and voice bots is that they work based on intents, and the intents are just a way of saying, well, if people say X, Y, Z, whatever, it's one particular category.
That's, everybody says that's AI, but in my opinion, that's rule based, because you say if this, then that.
Well, okay, so it's AI in the sense that you can train a model to weight the different words in the sentence, and then to find out when someone says a completely novel sentence, which of these pre-trained weights actually matches the best.
So you get you score the answers.
You score it, indeed. So it's a model, and it is trained, so in that sense it is learned, so in that sense it is AI. I do think that is much too limited, because that means that you're trying to reduce a whole load of meaning into just one category. And there is nuance. And it's obviously a fallacy to think that when people are uttering something, that they're saying one and the same thing all the time. right? So people tend to give context with what they say, or people ask multiple questions at the same time.
Can I ask you a philosophical question about
Go for
this? And this sort of keeps coming back in all the discussions, and I think it's a generational philosophical question. As I said before, no, I didn't say this before in this podcast, but in a different podcast, you should we learn to speak computer as humans, or does the computer needs to learn to speak human? And what I'm saying is, if some chatbots, if you use a few keywords, which are basically what you're looking for or what you're asking for, they give a better answer, or actually the proper answer, than when you give a full sentence with exact the same words in it, but with some context, as we, from a certain age, would talk like we talk to another human.
Yeah.
And it's either one or the other, but you need to serve both people. So either one party gets frustrated, and I'm confused about it, because we need to do both, or not. I don't know, but there's something wrong there.
Well,
you notice it in
certainly
every
think
test.
We need to go more towards the latter case, where the people don't need to adjust themselves to the channel, or to the bot in this case, but the bot must become more human. And
Why? Because it is a bot. Why does a bot need to be?
Because ultimately, when we engage with chatbots, our own blueprint, or our own benchmark is the human, and is human conversation. And so we come to our interactions with chat and voice bots with preconceptions of how language works, or how we expect to be understood. And I think that what we have found, and it's fair to say that there's quite a lot of frustration out there. I mean, there was a recent research paper published, I think in May of this year, in which they showed that even the pop-up of the chatbot on the site causes people frustration. Now, why does that happen? And my conviction is that this is because they often don't feel understood. And I think there was another brilliant illustrative thing. There was a piece of swag that was given out at a conference for chatbots, and it had a conversation on it, and it said, "What do we want? Intelligent chatbots. When do we want them? Sorry, I don't understand what you're saying." And this really is, I mean, you must have recognized this also in the various tests that you do. This experience happens frustratingly
every
often.
test we do, in every bot, you see it in all the podcasts, we run into these kind of trouble.
Yes.
And if you talk to people on the street or in your network, they all say the same thing. Oh, chatbots, please. They don't understand me. They give the wrong answer. And the interesting thing is, sometimes after the podcast, we try something different. And then you see if you use two words for two keywords, all of a sudden you get all the right answers. And I think if you look at the younger generation, the way they use WhatsApp, for instance, they use a few words where we use full sentences. We're like, okay, I have no idea what you're saying. That's when my kids, they add me in a normal way, but to their friends, it's just keywords. And that's how they talk to the computer. They talk computer, and we talk human, and to the computer.
Yeah, but I really think we shouldn't be thinking of this as an IT problem, as an AI problem, So
what's the perspective?
The perspective is, why not we take as our blueprint the best language system that we know to exist, namely the human brain.
Okay.
And we know a lot about how the human brain processes language and all the different cognitive functions, even sometimes beyond just pure language processing, that are involved in getting from some speech utterance to understanding, and then back to spoken language, basically. And we can, with the technology that we have today, build up a system that replicates many of these cognitive functions, and can sort of more approach the naturalistic human interaction, because I think we're too far away from it by just considering chat interactions in a list of intents that need to be trained, and scripted dialogue that is plugged into that.
So could someone or some other company use Ali? Because I presume Ali solves this problem.
That's that's.
I hear you talk about, okay, this is the frustration, then Ali must be the solution. Can you put Ali behind other platforms, or only, let's say you have a platform that uses or could use several AI engines? Could you put Ali behind that? Like make an interface instead, like IBM Watson and stuff like that?
Sure. I mean, for us, the channels aren't that interesting, right? So the channels, we're not a phone company or anything like that. The channels are for us a way of interacting with the engine under the hood.
So you can connect to other platforms as well. Well, it's interesting because
we call it the lift and shift approach, right? So we can also see, okay, what parts are in a company already, because sometimes you have companies who like to work with Microsoft or with other technologies. So we can also see, okay, what is in the company already.
And you don't ask why.
Yeah, sure, we ask why, because sometimes it should also be that we advise that things to be changed. But that's more like if a company has, for example, a contract or a preferred suppliership with Microsoft, well, then it's not. That's a large way to go, at least to change that, and that's not our goal. The goal is to actually be able to help customers in the best way.
And what do you think about that? That companies make a choice for technology based on the blueprint of their ICT, and then choose a technology where the conversation designers have to work with, and then end up not being able to deliver because the technology doesn't serve the strategy, because they've taken a technological decision and not a purpose-driven decision or a strategic decision. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think Ian can answer it from a technology point of view, but more from a user point of view. I think that it's what I see too much happening in organization is that IT is making the choice or doing the process of which system are we going to choose, and not actually collaborating with the people that have to use it. So then you get a great IT, you have a great contract, and it's sharp and cheap and whatever, but it doesn't work. No, right. It's not always the best solution.
And well, that's also interesting, because the process of procurement on the one hand, and or a selection of software, and on the other hand, your strategy. What I see, if I talk to companies, that they do not, and you said it before, they don't look ahead 5 years from now. What use cases could I possibly need? Like, okay, imagine whatever you can, put it on paper or in a computer, and use that as a requirement. And then you might not use it, but if you want to, you're not limited by technology. Or it could be on the roadmap. That's also good. And I see that companies are just not doing that. And they buy Microsoft, and then they end up, okay, but we can do, or CX, or whatever company. It's not about these companies, but in general, it doesn't serve the purpose.
I have been at both sides of the table for this particular.
You've been selling software?
Well, so I did assignments at large corporates and things like that, and I get some of the reluctance to have all sorts of different solutions for sometimes even in the worst case for the same problem. So different departments procuring different software that solves the same problem, and if you have too much different software, it becomes very difficult to maintain.
You get spaghetti.
And you get spaghetti. And I think
this is it's still working. Never mind.
So I understand the perspective of the IT organization that says, well, we're going to centralize on a specific vendor.
I'm not.
Stekker ligt er, die oranje stekker die viel.
Check if it's still on. Yeah, still on. Well, we had a technical intermezzo. This is a new one for us.
It's live, right? So
yeah, it's live.
Yeah,
shit happens.
Yeah, so I was saying that. So I can sympathise to an extent with the perspective of I don't want my IT organisation to have all these different solutions that I then have to support, and someone has introduced this, and that person has left the organisation, and I have no idea how I can run this thing. But I think that there is then the tendency to become too strict in this and too inflexible. Where I think that what you could do is you could if you focus on adopting industry standards and maintaining some form of agility in your IT architecture, I think that puts you in a good place to try to get the best of both worlds, where you're able to adopt new technology in a controlled way, and you also don't have the risk that if it is industry standard, that if for whatever reason someone leaves the company who was the maintainer of this, that you couldn't get someone else with the knowledge to then support it.
So no exotic solutions.
No point solutions, I would say. Right, so no so tailor-made solution that only one guy has the knowledge to support it. Yeah.
Oh, but actually not bad. So no tailor-made solution, because you also see companies build stuff themselves around solutions because the solution doesn't do what they want. Yeah. They build something around it, and then you have a different set of problems. You have invested so much that changing is not an option anymore. But you actually have like it's glued together, but it's not optimal.
Let me prefix my answer then. So I don't mean no tailor-made solution, because obviously software that is out there is written for a general audience. The big vendors make software components, and they make them for all different industries, right? So it's an illusion that you can just adopt something and then it immediately works for the nuances that you have within your company. So there's always going to be some customization in that. But what I would argue is try to do the customization as configuration.
Yeah, within the software. Yeah. So choose software where you change the settings and you have what you want.
Yeah.
Might be a lot of work, but not having to build new modules or stuff like that in order to be able to do what you want. Yeah. And this is what we see happening. Okay, we don't have an interface, or if there's no API, so let's build one. And that's when the problems start, because you have to maintain the software and you have something exotic and you're last on the list.
And most of the time it's also not the kind of the key competence that such a company has. If you're an insurance company, then you have a lot of people that know a lot about insurances, but it doesn't mean that they also have a lot of knowledge about all the details which apply to a conversational AI, for example. And at least not in that's always interesting to see. No, it isn't. But the question should be: okay, are you going to develop this yourself, knowing that it's going to be a long-term strategy, that you will need a lot of people to do it, and to be also sitting on the front row of what's happening in the market and to see how you can implement it. But, or is that more for a specific company to do that?
But also with software, if you develop software, and you're more of an expert on this, scale is the whole point of software. You develop it once and you deploy it in many different settings, and that's where you make the money. So how, as an insurance company, for example, why would you, in God's name, develop your own software because you're the only one using it? There is no scalability there. And there's the knowledge problem. And I used to work in a company where when we wanted something new, they said, we build it in Java. And I would ask, I was the marketing communications manager. I would ask, why do we build it in Java? Because it makes no sense. Because we have Java programmers. I said, well, that's a very bad reason. Get different programmers or hire a company. No. That's our standard because we have the programmers. To me, that was like a short-circuited. And we end up building it in something else because the Java programmers would take a year and I was delivering in 8 weeks. So the story is you need to strategize first, and then the rest of the choices will follow. But in my opinion, the strategizing, you mentioned it, Carla, before, it's so important. You take the pain in the beginning and you think how to implement and embed it in your organization. If you don't do that in the beginning, you run into trouble at the end. It's also managing expectations. Yeah, right. And it's also, from an investment point of view, important to understand that it's not like we're going to build a proof of concept for 10,000 or 20,000 euros and then it stops. And then everybody will be happy. I wish. Yeah, and I think that's also where I think our industry comes from. That when 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you could build for example, a chatbot that could make an appointment or something. And okay, if you have one, you develop such a solution and you can actually implement it in a lot of companies, but then it's still one solution for one question. And you don't want to have another solution, another company for the question, can you call me back, for example? So I think it's also very important that's what we learned, and that's also where
a lot of frustration comes from, as well from the customer, but also from the company, that they invest a lot of money and then think, oh, but it can only do this small part, and how are you actually going to to make this bigger and more valuable for your organization? And that will take a long-term strategy and also the right people to do it.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. I got one question for you, Ian. If you look at Ali, and you would get, what would be the greatest value when you compare it with other platforms, AI platforms, that Ali brings to potential customers or platform owners who think, hey, I need Ali behind my software to deliver value. What value are you delivering that's so great that you're hopefully, for you, uncomparable with any other platform?
Yeah, so it's actually
without giving a sales pitch, because we're not selling software.
Sure. So
I'm trying to learn about value.
Yeah, so it's actually two of the things that we already talked about. So on the one hand, the maintainability. So by centralizing all in one single knowledge base and actually bringing that knowledge base to the channels, it makes it a lot easier to maintain and to scale out for the organization themselves. And then on the other hand, in terms of customer experience, by taking the human brain as our blueprint, and by treating the language that comes in as, well, language to be decomposed into its constituent parts and to be recognized and not just classified into a bucket, we can ultimately deliver a much better conversation. In which you can do things like refer to separate things that have been mentioned earlier on in the conversation, and not just treating every utterance as a separate thing to be classified, basically.
And Ali is operational.
Yes.
Did you do I'm getting curious here, an A/B test with another AI engine and your AI engine with the same type of questions coming in? And
it's high on our list because that's, I think, because we also feel that people, when we start explaining to people what we do, then it's like, first it was, it's not possible, and then people don't believe it. So that's something, and they have been working and they have talked to many companies already, and they all say, we have the best analysts.
That's the problem. Everybody says they're the best and they're so good.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking, did you compare? Because then you have something to show. I gladly invite you, once you've done the test, come here, show the results, because people might be surprised, if I listen to you guys, what the outcome might be. And
we also want this to be done by a company which is independent, because if we, it's like in the Netherlands we say, wij van wie, of wij say eens, twice wij say eens.
That sounds so Dutch.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's, but that's also important for us, that if we want to be compared, and we want it to be done by an external company, so that it's actually valuable and also credible for the rest of the world to.
So basically, you're seeking a partner in that.
Yes.
So this is a call to people who are listening. If you
go for it. No, absolutely.
Because I think that's where the value it needs to be shown.
Yes.
Because otherwise, it's hard to believe what the difference, hard to understand what the difference is.
Yeah. I think, by the way, that from the point of view of understanding that the main benefit for the company then also is that you get a lot of higher percentage of unassisted customer contact.
Yeah, the value of the proposition goes up.
Right.
The business case becomes better.
Yeah, right.
Although I don't know how expensive or the cost of your solution, but if it's comparable to other AI engines, then there's no difference.
Yeah, right.
You'd say you're right, the price is comparable, or you're right about the value?
No, well, we don't want to short sell ourselves. I think we definitely have what we consider a disruptive proposition, and something completely different than the industry has currently seen. So I think that is realistic. Also, given that we have indeed invested in this for a while.
But how long have you been building?
We started the company in 2020. So
I remember that. Yeah. You announced it.
And we started building from day one. We had been previously working, a number of colleagues of mine as well, in this area for a number of years already. And so we came into the company with a lot of ideas and visions and things like that, and have gradually made those a reality over the last 3 years. So
I think that's also something that which is the power of the company, that since we had this experience already, then you can start kind of clean sheet. If you have built your technology in a certain way, then it's very difficult if there are new kind of paradigmas to integrate them because you already have something.
Paradigms.
Right, paradigms, right. So that is very important, I think, that and also for us lucky that we didn't have all those kind of the shit of yesterday. We could actually start with something new with the knowledge that we already had. So that's
so basically you were not limited by old technology or old paradigms or platforms or whatever. I'm very interested. I'm really curious about the comparison and the outcomes. So if you have those, or maybe it can help you partner up with some company, please come back and show it to the world.
Challenge accepted.
Well, there you go. We have another. Let's try to aim for Q1 next year.
Yes, that would be
You're more
great.
than welcome. Okay. The other question I have: did you see any interesting use cases, not so much based on your technology, but in general in our field, where you think, okay, this was really, really done well, or as an example, or it's interesting but not done well in the market with chatbots or voice bots?
Yeah, well, we see a lot of initiatives in the market, and what we always see is that.
That doesn't mean they're interesting.
No, that's true. Yeah. What I personally at least find interesting is that when people talk, we tend to talk. That's what Ian already said. We tend to give some more information than just say. For example, if you have a bank and I want to log into the system, then we expect somebody to say, "How can I log into the system?"
Yeah.
And then the system can answer. But what would happen if somebody says, "I want to turn in a claim, but I don't know how to log into the system," because then
he gives more context.
Right, and it's also kind of too intense at the same time. And then you see almost every chatbot in the Netherlands and also, by the way, abroad, that it says, "Well, sorry, I cannot understand you," or just pick one of the questions and that not have the memory to say, "Okay, so first I will help you log in, and then I can also help you to give your claim to our company."
And the other problem is that the chatbot doesn't hop along to the next page, because if you log in, then it's gone.
Yeah, that's true
Usually.
as well. Yeah, then you have to start all over again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't remember.
Yeah, and that's it's kind of a memory function which a lot of chatbots don't have, which I think is from a customer experience point of view, it's very important that you don't have to start over again and again and to ask your questions in separated questions, because otherwise the system will not understand. So this is a frustration.
But it's like a lousy human handover. It's the same thing that you call company.
Yes.
They ask you to identify yourself and you get transferred to another person and he asked you, could you identify yourself?
Exactly.
But I just did. That's how I got to you. Yeah, but I need to ask this question, blah, blah, blah. Same reasons.
Yeah.
Chatbots do the same thing.
And it's even more frustrating, I think, in a chat context where you actually see your previous answer on the screen.
Exactly.
Right, you think it's there. I just told you that this is the case, and now you're asking the question again. So, no.
And the second part, which I also find very important, is the human handover. So where actually in the conversation is the moment where you can, as a customer, easily do the handover or the seamless handover to a real
live agent.
Right? And that's interesting because we work for a company which provides water in the Netherlands. And what is interesting that we did a lot
water as to the houses, you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Just a general water supply.
True. Yeah. And what was interesting, we built a.
It's called utilities in English, right?
Utilities, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes Ian can you can.
No, it's okay. We're getting there.
Yeah. But what we did was we built an agent for their contact center. And what was very interesting, that we had a voice agent, yes, for their contact center. And what was very interesting was that we had a lot of discussion about, okay, how easy are we going to make it for the user to actually ask for a live agent? And there were kind of two. So some person said, well, we don't have to offer this at all because we want everybody to be able to use the automated way. And then other people would say, yeah, but if somebody would like to talk to a real person, then it should also be easy for them. Well, anyway, so we did a user test, A/B user test, and then we saw that actually when we offered to people, then they could say employee, and then they would get an employee on the phone. Then those people would far more use the voice assistant because they knew they were in control themselves. And anyway, in any moment, if they feel like I'm not getting there with the chat or with the assistant, then I can actually transfer to this live agent. So by offering this in an active way, actually the usage of the assistant was far higher. So that was very interesting to see.
Does that surprise you?
Yes. Yeah, well, it did surprise me because we also thought up front that if we would offer people to be able to talk to an employee, that everybody would say employee immediately. So nobody would actually use the assistant anymore, which was not the case. So actually more people started using the assistant after offering, giving them the ability to go to a live agent.
What I see is very often if you offer transparency and honesty about the process upfront, you get a lot better feedback and more confidence in what they're going into, or less fear, because they have the escape at any given moment. Same chatbots we developed. If you tell the customer, if you don't have time to finish it, no worries, the conversation will stay there. You can come back anytime, and nothing happens. Your data is not lost.
Yeah.
And usually they finish it.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Some people pause because they have to look stuff up, but then it's usually they do it immediately.
Yeah.
And I find that, and we asked about that, and they said, no, but it's about confidence. And based on previous experiences with chatbots that did not say they didn't say they were automated. People thought, I'm talking to a person. And then all of a sudden, I don't understand you. What do you do? What don't you understand? I'm clear. Because they had a perception that they're talking to a human.
Yeah.
And if the chatbot tells you upfront, listen, I am a chatbot, I'm learning. I need your help to learn. So if I don't understand, I'll ask you a question to help me understand better. That's okay. People don't mind.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, then they do mind. Because they expect, you're not managing expectations, basically.
It's interesting because when I started working in the conversational AI industry, I was focused on the Google Assistant. And then I saw a lot of people, they were very forgiving for the Google Assistant, since it was a kind of a gadget and you would like
adopters.
to have it. Yeah, but I think it still is. So, because today, if I ask something to my Google Assistant and the system doesn't understand, then we try to do it in 5 different ways. A lot of times I don't get the answer. But if you have a contact with a voice assistant in the contact center, then the user expects that it to be as good as a human person, as an agent. So they're not so forgiving as when you would use the Google Assistant, which is also quite interesting to see. So
that makes perfect sense.
Yes, it does, but it's
because a Google Assistant, you have a choice. You can also go to the light switch and turn it on yourself. If you have a virtual assistant on the phone, you do not have a choice. This is what you get. So I think that giving, that's what we just said. If you have a choice or the idea of a choice, that does something in your mind, and where maybe you're not so forgiving, but you understand there's an escape route.
Yes, but it doesn't make the technology, I think, because the technology might be at the same level, and then even then, it's interesting to see how forgiving people are actually for big companies like Google, and how unforgiving they are to a certain company which wants to give a user experience in their specific area. So that's for me, I found that very interesting, because when I was working with voice assistants, I could see in user tests that the experience and the standards that people expect from a call center are much higher in voice assistants than they would be from a Google Assistant point of view.
But I do understand this.
Yeah.
I don't know how you see this, Ian.
I understand it as well, I must say. But yeah, so a part of the I wouldn't say frustration, but the weird thing is that we do tend to hold AI to a higher standard than we do our human agents sometimes. And I think this is partly also because of fear, because AI has lots of connotations, and people tend to think, this thing is going to produce lots of answers, and I'm not sure whether they're going to be the right things. And a lot of this fear is unfounded, because if you do have an AI assistant, unless you make the sort of the mistake that Microsoft did when putting Tay onto Twitter and being self-learned, and then start spouting right-wing propaganda, basically.
Same thing with BlenderBot.
Well, yes, these types of things. Unless you do that, there's still a way of having control over what your AI actually produces, and the worst thing that it can happen is that it just doesn't understand exactly what the user is saying, and then the user gets transferred to an agent that does. So I think there is an argument to be made that if we're seeing the virtual assistants as our virtual colleagues, basically, shouldn't we hold them to the same type of standards?
I totally agree. And what the virtual assistants I was involved with, virtual colleagues actually, they were actually better than and more consistent than the actual advisors. Not because the advisors are bad, because it's humanly impossible to always ask the right questions in the right situation. Whereas if you have that in the system, you're 100% proof or foolproof or fail-proof actually. And humans are not, so they have to call back. Oh, I have another question. Need some more information.
It's also, I think, very difficult for. I know from a health insurance company that every year they acquire. I think they do recruitment for 700 agents in their contact center.
Temporary, you mean?
Temporary in the end of the year, because that's where all the people can choose for new insurance. And it's very hard to actually train those 700 people in the same level. And then I think, why are those companies actually training so many people and also recruiting so many people while investing this amount of money in a good voice assistant might be so much smarter and better and more valuable for the long term.
But if we're talking about health insurance, I got a question here because it surprises me. All health insurance, of course, they try. It's a yearly run for new customers, and there's not that many new customers, so it's basically stealing them away from another company. Yeah. There is no health insurance company, to my knowledge at least, or I didn't deal with them, that asks you after you've bought the policy. They call you up, it could be with a voice assistant or a chatbot, outbound chatbot, to ask if you're satisfied, because you're only paying money and you're using healthcare. They're not doing it. And they're spending millions and millions on campaigns to get new customers. And once they're in, there's no attention and they repeat that every year. They make the same mistake. Why don't you put in an effort to keep me as a customer? They do not.
Yeah.
And they themselves make it all about pricing, not about value.
Well, I
Sorry
used to work
to be. I know you did. That's why I asked.
I totally agree. It's kind of a silly thing actually that all those companies are investing so much money in campaigns, and in the meanwhile just trying to steal each other's customers. But I've also been working at a company, and I still remember that there was also kind of business case. So if we would call all our customers, and it would be 10 euros per phone call, well, then it was a kind of
Mission Impossible.
Yeah, at least that was what they thought, and I still don't know if a company would do it, what would happen, because it's also important that because all the other companies, they have campaigns, so they're very visible in the market. So what would actually be of the most value? To invest this in your current customers and to keep them on board, or to actually make sure that all those people who are going to shop for new insurance and make sure that you are visible and findable for them as well. I think it would be better, I think, if all the insurance companies were not allowed to spend so much amount of money on this campaign. So give them a maximum amount, and then that's
like political parties.
Right. Yeah.
I hear a concept coming up to build for stocketing, which we talked about before. It's like we figure out something, we build it, and we show them how they can do it.
Yeah, so perhaps you should, I don't know.
Maybe we should build it before we broadcast. Otherwise it's gone, the idea.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, the technology is perfectly suited to do this, to solve this scale problem. And it's just an example. You could do the same thing for newspapers. I find it crazy that you offer new people who have a new subscription, you offer them a huge discount for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And if you've been a customer for years, they don't offer it to you. You're getting punished, or you're getting pushed to stop your subscription for 3 months and then do it again with a discount. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, you see, but that's a kind of off topic for conversation. But you see
it's on topic because the technology allows us. Because the argument is, okay, it's too expensive to approach all these people, and direct mail doesn't work, and email is too much. We can't call all of them, and if they call, it's some aggressive young kid that gets a commission for selling you a subscription. You don't want those on the phone. You just hang up or just think you're not interested.
Yeah.
Or I'm in the don't call me register. So here's we have technology and the ability to do something about this and make customers, have them connect more to the company they're a customer with. without having the huge investments and scalability problems. So I dare to disagree.
That's okay. Yeah.
Hey, I'm the host, so I can disagree. But it's what we're doing. We're solving scalability problems.
Yeah, but so what I mean is that when you have a look at the loyalty programs which the companies have, normally you get the cheapest product or the cheapest price when you are a new customer. And what you now see in the market, that there are also a lot of companies that actually say, okay, your discount gets more after you're being a customer for a more longer time. And I think that's a very good idea, because that would mean that the longer you are a customer at a certain company, the bigger discount you would get. And then I think that's a totally different way of phrasing this kind of stuff. And in the meanwhile, I still agree with you that it would be very interesting to see how can we actually make conversational AI work also in the outbound way of working to serve your customers in a better way.
By the way, I disagree with the pricing spiral you just mentioned, because what you're doing, you're creating a red ocean strategy. You're basically making it impossible for you to make money in the long term, because if people are happy with your product, I don't think you should lower your price, but you should increase your value. Because otherwise we're talking actually about managing expectations. I'm not trying to correct you, by the way, but if you manage expectations and the expectation is every year that I'm a customer, my price goes down, then if you're not doing that, I'm like disappointed. But every year if you give me a new feature or value or premier access to a new feature which actually is going to the public in 6 months, but you get it first. And then you say, oh, this is really nice. I'm happy. Look at what I got.
But I totally agree. So it's not just one button you should turn. Exactly. It's a combination, I think, of those things.
There's not one right answer.
Right. Yeah.
But I should stay away from red ocean strategies, because that sort of destroys your business model.
Yeah, I agree. It's and that's something that we don't want with Ellie. And we also see this as a kind of we have a lot of chatbots, linear chatbots with the scripted dialogues, and that's something we don't want to be. So we also think, okay, how can we actually make clear to the customers that there is a kind of a new blue ocean in this area, and how this works and what it can mean for your company.
And I would be interested to see how can you combine it with linear chatbots, because you build linear chatbots for a reason, because you get the outcome you want. It's predictable, and you get a stable conversation. And after that, I think you need to add smarter stuff. Yeah. But first you need to wow the customer and make him happy. Once you've achieved that, then you go to the next level. And you can use all the data to train your AI, because you already have the data.
Well, I don't know if it needs to be phased in that way, but I certainly see that there is a use case for linear chatbots still, because they are relatively easy to build and to deploy, and there are so many vendors out there, right? So you have a massive choice of different vendors with which to build a simple linear chatbot for an isolated use case. I think organizations can, if they just want to feel their way into this type of area, that's a relatively low threshold way of doing it. But I do think that as an organization considering this, and we did an e-learning for thuiswinkel.org.
Shopping,
Dutch organization.
In which this was sort of the challenge that we put to the people doing the course. Think of what is your longer term goal for your organization as well, and how complex is your organization, and what types of different processes would you want to support also with conversational AI. And if that's more than just a handful of different things that you want to do, then I would argue it makes sense to do it right the first time, and to consider the more complicated and yes, slightly more effortful deployment of real conversational AI, rather than just a linear chatbot with a handful of intents.
I agree, but at the same time, I realize that the pressure on the people having to build it, especially in large corporations, to deliver value, because they're spending a shitload of money. In the beginning, you're burning cash like crazy. It's like a startup. and then but you still don't offer any value, and then it takes it a while before you're at the level where the customer says, "Oh wow, this helps," and there's a lot of pressure from the C level or the level underneath to deliver the value. So you need to have a lot of small successes consecutively. And I understand
the strategy, but it also comes with the risk of spending the money twice.
So how do you? It's interesting. I don't have the answer, but how would you combine then the both and have still the consecutive small successes, and without spending so much extra money, because then the pressure to deliver becomes greater, and we know you also fail along the way. Not everything succeeds. In order to succeed, you need to fail.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can also in the concept that we're developing build a more linear flow. And we have done, and there are use cases in which that really makes sense. Also, with certain frequently asked questions and things like that don't require a whole knowledge base behind them. It makes sense to make it simple. Yeah. So there is a way of getting up to speed relatively quickly with these types of things. But again, I think it's for if you know that you're a complex organization with lots of different processes, it makes sense to make a technology choice that will give you that agility ultimately.
I'm really curious how you guys are going to market this, because I understand there's I'm not resisting, but there is some hesitance in the order of things because of not the pressure, but in order to succeed in a large corporation, you need to deliver. And if you're taking great technology, but it prohibits you from succeeding fast, even though the end game is much better, it's a complex dilemma. I would think it's a complex dilemma, and you need a lot of convincing to do that you need more budget, more time, more people to deliver the value you can deliver.
Well, I think it's because we work with our technology in different, also big corporate companies already.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
And that's so it's not like. But I think what we have to do is also make sure that, because we invested a lot of time in the technology, so we have a great technology. And next step is also
startup, right? We have the greatest product. Shit, we have to sell it.
Well, our founder doesn't like the word startup because it
scale up.
Yeah, I think that more covers where we are as a company, but also because of the knowledge and experience that we actually brought into the company in the first sense. So we're not the startup pioneering and
not right out of school,
failing fast and things like that. But we build this with a real vision, and we're living up to this basically. So, yeah.
You're proving it works.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, and we by the way also have now our office in Vietnam and Da Nang. Yeah. Where we also sometimes talk to Wouter Stichter. His name comes by.
I'm working with him.
And
we're doing a project together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. And also we are now researching if any other company might be interesting, of country I should say. So that is because we also have an international ambition. So we start in the Netherlands, and we have this great new technology for this conversational AI area. But it's also something that might be interesting for a lot of other countries as well. And we also have customers which are international. So we have, for example, a chatbot that's hosted from Curaçao, but it works, I think, in 15 or 17 languages now. Wow. So it's not like we are now thinking, okay, how are we going to sell this product? It's more like we go along. So we sell the product, we develop the product, and then in the same time actually build something great and a great experience for the customers. Yeah.
And I really think that A/B testing with another other AI engine, just showing the difference or feeling the difference. I think that's more like it. Then you are really convincing, and then price is not an issue. Then value is an issue. Yeah. Cool. I can't wait. How do you see the future of chatbots and chatbot technology, and especially AI? Because AI is happening. But we're at the beginning of this huge wave. Everybody in the business sees it, feels it, and we don't know how the wave is going to roll out. But how do you guys see it? Of course, positively, because you developed the software. I understand that, but look beyond that.
Well, and I also see the necessity, right? So there is a huge shortage of talent in the labour market, basically, and that will only become more in the next few years. At the same time, you see that a lot of talented people are leaving organisations and taking their knowledge along with them. So I think that there's a real incentive to invest in technology that allows you to keep and solidify the experience within the
Customer
organisation.
experience. Or
And
the
not with the
experience in
employee
general.
experience, I would say, right? So the knowledge of the people who have been working in these knowledge-intensive processes day in, day out for years and years and years, and have built up this whole repertoire.
So basically the silent engines of your company.
Yes.
Because that's
Yes, very much.
That's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
okay.
So and you also mentioned, I mean, that the technology is developing really rapidly, and it really is the case that from month to month, something new and shiny comes out that is even more impressive than all the things that we've previously seen. So I think that there is a huge potential from the technology side. I think there's a huge demand and necessity for having this type of technology, and I think we're just fortunate that the two are coming together.
I think from a technology point of view, what's very interesting are the large language models. So what are they going to mean in this area? And because if you can generate language in an automated way.
In different languages even.
Yeah, right. So that might be very interesting as well. We work on, we call it Kletsbot. It's actually a chatbot for people feeling lonely. And we use this GPT-3 technology for this, which is very promising and also really great to see what's possible in this area.
Yeah, you see a lot of that kind of ideas popping up. And,
So and for these types of applications where it's an open domain conversation, where it's just infeasible to script out all the different things that someone might want to talk about in their day-to-day life, these types of large language models really have some potential. They're not without risk and they can't be sort of employed without thinking, basically. So there's the risk that they confabulate things. There's the risk that they generate incorrectness, basically, in their responses. And so I think that the best way that we can go forward is to try to marry this approach of the large language model, which is really great at generating text or seeing correlations between words that are sort of just at a scale inconceivable to humans.
So basically you're saying, if I translate correctly, you're de-risking AI. By applying it in a certain way and adding stuff to it, you're de-risking it.
Or supplementing it with something that it lacks, namely knowledge.
But that's de-risking it, because one of the problems is that the outcome is, you don't know what comes out because it's AI. People don't understand the algorithm. I mean, in Holland we had some affairs with AI doing stuff we didn't want it to do.
Not only in Holland,
it's close to our heart, and it's devastating. So that's why I'm asking. If
de-risking is an outcome, but I'm convinced that
it's a positive outcome.
It's a positive outcome, but I'm convinced that it's just necessary to marry the generative capabilities of the large language models or whatever technology supplants them in X number of years with actually the more classical AI type approaches. And this approach has been called the hybrid neurosymbolic AI approach with champions like Gary Marcus, basically. And I think there's a lot of mileage in this. Use the AI knowledge that we already have to give the system knowledge, and use the generative and learning capabilities of the large language models to give it more creativity, more freedom, more.
So are you saying that AI should train AI?
Well, people are doing this. In fact,
having AI train AI.
So DeepMind is doing this. So there's definitely a solution in that. So I tend not to subscribe to the self-learning approach or the end-to-end self-learning approach, but I think that we have developed great knowledge models over many years, since the 60s, basically, when classical AI had its genesis.
Yeah, people tend to forget that. 20 years ago, there were already chatbots and
Yes.
AI models
Yes.
going around and
Yeah.
doing stuff. My kids were my oldest son told me, I was playing with an AI thing online, talking to it.
Yeah.
It was there already, and it's still there.
Yeah. And many of the ideas behind those technologies are really valid still to this day. And
So actually, we're using old technology. But we're
using
late
both.
in applying it.
It's the best of both worlds. That's the argument I would make.
So looking ahead, basically, we're doing a lot more things AI based, but we still need people to improve it.
Yes,
to manage
and
it.
So again, our payoff is empowering humans, and I think that is always the objective, right? And
Because that's where people are scared that AI takes over.
yes, yeah. So, but what we really want to do with the AI is to help the human either in their job or to get the answers or to do the simple task that you want to accomplish with it. Yeah, indeed.
And make the customer experience better. Yeah. I would be amazed if we do this again in 5 years to see where we're at, because I think I totally agree. I think a lot of it is changing. We had in our family discussion in a weekend somewhere at a family dinner, and we were discussing. It's like, how horrible is it for a doctor to, if you have a lot of patients with cancer who are dying or have a risk at dying early. What does it do to a doctor to have to say that every time? Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't you use AI and technology to tell you what it is and what's happening, and then let the doctor after that take over? So because how can all those emotions be good for a doctor? It's really interesting discussions. One half of the family said, no, you want to hear this from the doctor. And the other half was like, no, but actually that's a good idea, because then it's without emotion. You get fact-based information. You can ask your technical questions. And then when it comes to the treatment, you go back to the doctor and, okay, let's get to business. Can we cure it? What are we going to do? And it's really interesting. And then you talk to doctors. Recently talked to an oncologist, and he said, it's true. It's like I have these talks every day, and it's draining me in terms of energy, because I want to be there for these people, but it's hard. Mm-hmm. Even though we get a lot of training, it's hard. And then I thought, there is something of value there. So maybe in 5 years' time, we make the life of doctors easier, and you get a call from your software saying, well, you have this disease, and there is a treatment possible, and blah blah blah, and please make your appointment for the treatment.
It's very interesting. Is you should find the optimum in what is good for the customer, of the client, or the patient in this case, and for the doctor, because that's the two perspectives that we should keep in mind.
And the last one is usually forgotten.
Yeah. True. It's quite an interesting way of looking at it.
It's a bit philosophical, but I presume your technology can do this.
Well, yes, but I think there should be a discussion and
a medical,
maybe
ethical discussion.
Ethical discussion, but and also probably some scientific studies into what is good in these types of cases. So we already struggle or find this type of dilemma. When we think about things like, okay, so we want to service a customer who's had a divorce. So do you want the divorce case to be handled by the virtual assistant? And do you want the virtual assistant to then be empathetic and say, oh, I'm sorry that you had your divorse?
And the guy says, no, I'm really happy.
Well, exactly. So
why
there is
sorry?
this type of thing as well. So it warrants care, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's an interesting development, and I think we'll see some of that happen. Yeah. At least some of the discussion, and I would presume that, for instance, divorces, the technology could do that without any emotion or prevalence for one part or the other. Yeah. And I think also in legal proceedings, you see it in some countries already. They're experimenting with legal proceedings just based on AI, and you get the same outcome more consistently by the software than the judges, mm-hmm. which is scary. If you think about that, it's okay. In Israel, they did an experiment with the same type of crimes, and then what the judge would rule, and then they would look at the time of day the ruling was. And they saw that, I'm not sure about the times, but if it was in the morning, the punishments would be higher than in the afternoon for the exact same crimes. And that doesn't make any sense. So I think lawyers understood that. So they start scheduling the cases in the afternoon or in the morning to get the best results.
They should actually get a kind of agent whispering from AI. So normally in these kind of cases, this is what happens more as an advice, and then they can decide themselves if they find there are any
based on previous cases.
Right,
This should be the ruling, but there is always instances or reasons why you could differ. But then you argue why it's different. Why it's an interesting. Well, we're discussing this, but if you think about it, we're discussing the future. I'm ready to test a bot.
Shall we? Yes.
Shall we? You're in control, and you probably need to activate the mouse, turn it on and off. There's a little switch, and then back on. Now it's off. Now on again. Oh, you got it. There we go.
Okay.
What we do when we test the bot, we always read out loud what we see, because the people on YouTube can actually see what we're doing, but on Spotify they need to hear what we're doing. So you do whatever you want. I will read what we see.
Yeah.
So you can focus on.
So we're looking at the chatbot for DHL, and let's see if we can find it on the customer service page.
No, we're doing this in Dutch. Actually, why don't you put it in English? So and that just language.
Do we then want to interact with it in English as well?
Yeah, why not? So it's the same thing.
Let's see. This says chat with us. Okay, so we have DHL. Obviously, we have the express part and the DHL parcel part. I suspect that it's this one. It's the chat with us one.
Well, let's see.
I must say, actually, okay. So
it's confusing because they have the same symbol, and on the left they use chat, and the other one chat with us, which suggests it's live chat.
What I also find interesting is then when you want to call it costs €1 per call, which is also kind of channel steering, right? Yeah.
But I do actually appreciate that they do list the phone number as well, and I think that this will give the customer some sympathy towards it, and possibly indeed even more. You think people will just only call?
Now, if you see the €1 thing per call, you're like,
right,
okay, I got unlimited minutes on my phone subscription, and these people, as I would say it, I could use a different word, are charged. They're not delivering my package, and I have to pay €1 for a call. How does that make sense?
Okay, so this is clearly not where it was.
Okay.
Also no.
So that means that the Dutch page is different from the...
Maybe the Dutch one.
So I'll go back to Dutch.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
So you have
her
to
name
scroll
is...
down, really.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find. It's somewhere at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
And it says here, ask your question to Tracy.
Yeah.
What we really like, by the way, the name Tracy was really, for DHL, I would say, it's really a good
Trace,
name.
yeah, track and trace.
Yeah, right, yeah. So that's a nice conversation.
It wasn't that thing.
They knew we were testing. They deleted the bot.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, you just have to scroll. Okay, so this is confusing, right? So you get the...
It's not
frequently asked questions.
It's not a premier channel.
Right. And it keeps switching back.
Jumping back. Just click on Tracy. It says here, ask Tracy.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Phone contact.
Oh, this is amazing.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, we got it. It's really hard to... It keeps disappearing. It's really weird.
Oh.
Yeah, so you see that because yesterday evening when we tried it, we were not actually, the phone number was not in our face, but now it's opening hours, so perhaps that's also a difference. But when they're closed,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we see? It says here, you're speaking now to Tracy. Tracy, it says DHL carefully handles your data. You could read more about it in our privacy statements. And then it says, hi, welcome to the chat of DHL parcel. I'm Tracy, the chatbot. Are you receiving a package from us, or have you forwarded something? And then it asks with buttons, Are you a receiver, a sender, or different?
Yeah. So I also like this, and I think that it's a relatively narrow use case, right? And I can imagine that the volume of calls that DHL get is likely going to be things like, okay, I've lost my package, or
But that's what it says at the right side. It says, or choose a question.
Yeah.
So you give a specific intent to Tracy. It says here, where's my package?
Yeah.
It was delivered but not received. Package not delivered. Shipment delayed, or change the delivery.
So if we talk about cases where a linear chatbot might actually be sufficient, I hazard to say that this might be one of these cases where it's a relatively narrow use case with a limited number of ways that people would express the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay. So I do have a question based on an actual use case.
okay.
So last year we ordered a Christmas present for the entire company, basically, and they were due to arrive on a certain day, and we waited at the office, and we waited and we waited and we waited, and nothing came. And then in the email, they DHL actually said to us, well, the chauffeur has actually thought that it was that the company was closed, and there's absolutely no reason for someone to suspect that. We were there, the lights were on, etc. So
Didn't ring the doorbell.
Didn't ring the doorbell, so there was likely something else going on there. So I'm going to say different.
Okay.
Right.
And then it says, I'm curious, what is it about? And it says again with buttons, so it helps you go through the information quickly, information about shipments, applying to DHL, which makes me wonder, but okay. Fake mails, phishing, to report yourself or
Register
to
as a service point.
Yeah, as a service point, be a business client, or a different question.
Different question.
And all the time you can actually type your own message down in the box.
What I find interesting there is that you can use max 100.
Yeah, so they Twitterized the chatbot, which I don't think is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's probably for the understanding in a traditional way it might be good, but
then they should have said use the keywords, because because now you feel limited. But if you say if you use keywords, it makes it simpler. We can actually do the test. You use a sentence and you use keywords. See what happens.
yeah.
Sure. I'm now describing the case. So
Okay.
yesterday, the package should have been delivered. It didn't arrive.
It says in the mail, it says that you're over your, that's it. You're minus.
Yes, indeed. So it shows that you're in the red. So you've used up too many characters.
You owe them 50 characters.
And I can't push enter anymore. So
so you need to go back.
Yeah.
Backspace. So actually, it's costing you time, because you need to think about how to
Formulate your question, yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you tell them, please use keywords, because that sort of makes my life easier.
Yeah, you should either make it more understanding or use keywords for better.
So now I've now paraphrased a little bit.
So you wrote, yesterday package would be delivered, but the company would be closed, but that wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty sure they don't understand. It says your package wasn't delivered. What's wrong? And then it says, actually, this is good. It says well, these are the standard answers actually. It says a whole load of buttons. I think 9 buttons we get. It says the report or that you weren't at home and it wasn't right. And I think that's the one you need to push. The status delivered but not received. Status package. Making a delivery appointment. Wrong package received. Not at home code doesn't work, etc. You were quicker than I.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And it says your question is clear. Are you the receiver or the sender? You just said before what you were, no?
Yeah, so I'm the receiver indeed. Yeah, well, you could say that you could have made.
No, but you said it before. Here it says receiver, so it didn't keep your data. Yeah, it says here receiver.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right. So what is your tracking trace code? Now I'm going to ask, where can I find that?
and the word, it says, where can I find that? And that should relate to the track and trace code, see if it picks it up.
And it says, oops, this isn't a directory.
Here we go. So,
Would you like to try again?
so here's the problem. There's no AI behind it, because so it can't analyze, or not enough AI, or the intent wasn't. You're making the chatbot wild. This is funny. He says, I can't find it. Then Tracy says, thank you. With an emoji behind it. Track and trace code doesn't seem to exist. One of our live agents should look at this, because that's actually done well.
Chatting with
Who knows? That one sees more than I do. Let me see if someone's ready for you. Please be patient. I'll put you through. This could take a few minutes, and we're now chatting live with Marlou. Yeah. Marlou, welcome in our show. That's so funny, because we had that in the last one also. That was we in IKEA to see what happened. We wanted to know about hot dogs. Actually, totally useless, but it was fun. And then they took it seriously. They have no clue they were live on a recording.
The funny thing here is also that now you don't are bonded to 100 characters, so now you can actually say whatever you want. Yeah.
And we see the typing indicators, and Marlou is now very helpfully scrolling probably through what we had previously said to ask us a question.
I pity Marlou, because she doesn't know she's being recorded. And
Probably we should not go further now. But,
no, it's okay, because nobody knows Marlou.
That's true.
And it's public. It's DHL, so there's no. Okay, good afternoon. I understand that you have a message that you were close, but this wasn't right. If all's good, you would find the shipment number in the track and trace of your package, and then it asks what's your zip code and house number.
Yeah. Well, this is now obviously going to fail because we don't have an actual.
Okay, so what are we going to tell her? So yeah, thank you. Problem is solved.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna. We're not going to torture the girl.
No.
Oh, very good. So we said, thank you, Marlou. Problem is solved. Okay, what I would like to do is to go back to the main menu and try some different route. Yep.
What I also found interesting, because I saw these buttons also, if you would like to apply at DHL.
Yeah.
Then, because when I yesterday asked the question about working at DHL, then I would not get a response.
Oh.
And now we get to the same conversation, actually.
It doesn't. It's interesting.
I was keeping
Restart. Okay.
So, because Marlou hasn't closed it.
Possibly.
Or you could ask Marlou, can you put me back in touch with Tracy? Because last podcast we tested that, and IKEA couldn't put us back to, I forgot the name of the IKEA bot, but back to the chatbot. You had to start all over again.
Okay, yeah.
Which is, why can't I, if I can move to a live agent, why can't the live agent put me back in contact with Tracy?
Yeah, it goes so two ways.
Yeah, that in my head that makes sense. But
yeah.
And probably if you open a new field and of a new tabblad.
You think so?
I don't know, but it's also interesting to see.
Well, it depends if they put cookies there.
Yeah.
They didn't ask for permission, right? Or did they? In the beginning.
Might have done.
We get twice the same answer. Great that it was solved or resolved. Let's see if she. She's asking.
She's offering to.
She's being very helpful. This dear Marlou.
Yeah.
But we really want to go back to the chatbot. Please give us back to Tracy.
I would just say no, then probably she will end it.
Just ask her. Well, she's typing, but since her sentences are not that long, I wonder how much. Okay, it says here she could help us if we have another question, and otherwise you can close the chat. Okay, how do I close the chat?
Yeah, that might be the question too.
So what do you? We're asking if I close the chat, am I coming back in the conversation with Tracy?
Well, yeah. The behavior is when I close it, I can get back in contact with Marlou.
Yeah, but you want to be in touch. You're telling her what happened. So
Now we're testing Marlou instead of the
yeah, well, it's interesting because
We could try with
this is what it's all about. Because you're combining stuff. It's a virtual colleague.
yeah.
And how well is it integrated in what they're doing? And logically, you want to free up time of the live agent when it's for relevant calls. If I'm saying it's not relevant, please put me back to Tracy. Why can't I go back to the chatbot? And I understand you want to be helpful, but it's not useful.
Yeah, it should work.
And it's not economical. It's down there. So we're trying again to connect to Tracy. And we have...
Yes.
and we're back. You just closed the... Oh, she closed the call. Okay.
And then they ask how was your experiences?
Well, let's go back to that after we tested the rest. So what are we today? Right now? What do you want to test?
Yeah, so it might be interesting because yesterday I typed, for example, I would like to work at DHL.
Okay. Well, just try keywords, vacatures, job openings.
In keywords, yeah.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Might give... See? Right, spot on. So,
yeah, that's really good, yeah.
So why don't they, instead of, I really think they should change the line that your message can be a maximum 100 signs. That could be still there, but saying please use only keywords.
Yeah.
For your question.
I have a bit of a pet peeve with the keyword thing, so I understand.
No, you should have it because your field of expertise is of course the language part.
Yes, and I would say that I would like to see the virtual assistant to have its benchmark as the agent behind the computer. And if I were to call up DHL and to Marlou, we get Marlou on the phone and I say to her vacatures.
Yeah, that doesn't work. She's like, don't be so rude.
Exactly. So I would like to see if we can make this not another Google channel that we have to adapt ourselves to.
Listen, I totally agree, but what we're looking at is the way it's programmed, and basically what we're looking at, and again, we're not selling software, but please DHL. There is something to say for changing the engine, the language engine behind it. Maybe you should pitch to them and show them that it can be differently. And actually, it's interesting to ask DHL to say, okay, this is how it works now. What if you put our engine behind it and see what happens then? I don't know what the basis is of their software, but
users might be able then to use more their natural language and in sentences, and which might be really interesting.
Because we're proving here. And now ask a question. Ik zoek een baan. I'm looking for a job at DHL. So ask the same question, but then in a full sentence.
I suspect it'll be able to get this one as well. It's taking a while.
I'm thinking.
Doesn't even.
No reply.
And actually, what happens here? It says here choose. You remember? Choose a new.
No,
and then we type something, and this is also gone wrong.
Yeah.
They leave the text field open. You can type, you can send it, but it doesn't record it.
No.
So say yes, no. I have another question, and then we try again.
Okay, so this isn't like the reset. Okay.
Yeah, you have to redo it. It says it doesn't do anything. Ian, you've managed to shut down their...
But, well, if I now do the keyword thing again, does it still work?
I don't know. It doesn't work at all. You killed it. I think there's a panic now at DHL because someone gets a signal our chatbot is stuck. Tracy has given up.
Well, actually, overall, I still think that Tracy is a pretty nice chatbot.
It's definitely, they've done a good job with the intents, probably the most frequently used intents on the right.
Yeah.
I think that it's like a quick win, saving everybody time.
Yeah.
But there is some sort of loop in there.
That, the language and the understanding could be far much better, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a problem between keywords and full sentences. Basically, they hint us, if you have the expertise, that it's keyword based because of the maximum 100 characters. Oh.
And now
Tracy,
we restarted. Okay.
Oh,
It's just latency then.
she just... okay, so let's try again. Ik zoek een baan bij. I'm looking for a job at DHL. So she was just hanging in there.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
no.
see, here it goes wrong. Here we ask, I'm looking for a job at DHL, which is a sentence, and then it says, you want to know what what the status is of your shipment. Did I understand this correctly?
Yeah. And I think this is one of the shortcomings of the intent classification that we know, right?
I totally agree.
It probably triggers on something like ik zoek, and that probably happens so often in the example sentences for
My
my
package.
parcel. Yes.
Yes.
That now completely swamps the thing that you're actually saying, namely the job.
That's the same problem with AI and fake news. That's actually, it comes so often, it passes so often on the internet that apparently it seems true for an algorithm. Because it can't determine whether it's true or not based on how often they see it.
And particularly the large language models, so they just regurgitate the commonalities that they have been trained on, basically. So that's
So this is really interesting what's happening here.
Yeah.
I also see Tracy needs Ali. No.
You can use a little bit of it.
No, but I think they've definitely done some things right here, right? So I love the seamless transfer to the agent,
But not back.
but not back.
And I think most platforms can't do this.
Probably
Or don't allow you to do it.
Yeah. What would be a clear use case for you to go back to the chat?
For instance, based on, for instance, if you talk about the insurance market, and what I said, one of the projects I did is aftercare on insurance. Well, you could do aftercare and having a chatbot do some stuff, and then all of a sudden it becomes complicated, or the customer gets stuck in a certain question. He needs help. Okay, there's a live agent available. He talks him through in that specific part of the process to answer the question, because it can be complicated. And then he says, okay, you now answered it. I'll put you back on track where you were in the process. So basically you take a sidestep out of the process. The process is latent or dormant. It's available, but on the back end, you're helping the customer answer the question. So you're still in the process, but on a different channel. And then you push a button and say, you're now back, and thank you, have a good day. And if you need me, I'm still there.
Mm-hmm. I think it also has to do with scarcity. So if you
that would be another
lot
reason.
of people waiting in your contact center, you can only help customers with something which needs actually human empowerment, then you would actually transfer to the human. But if the questions then might be things that are not really required with human agents, then you could also say, okay, is it okay if I put you back to the chatbot so I can help other customers? So that might also be an interesting in future when we know that there is a kind of capacity issue in the market. That might also be interesting.
Cool. Do we have any more remarks for DHL or on the DHL part? Positive, negative, improvements? Or have we said it all?
I think we covered most of it, right?
Yeah, I truly also like their design. So that's also something that I think.
Calm.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
calm.
yeah. That's something that they obviously do very well.
And the little truck for the button to send your message nowadays.
It's more like the intelligence of the bot itself that might be improved. Yeah.
So again, room for improvement. And
but I can imagine that for just the simple cases, where is my parcel? Okay, give me the track and trace code. Assuming you can find it and you can type the thing into the computer. I think that's perfectly adequate, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, you could use the bot to guide people so show an image where they can find an email or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
So there should be a little bit more guiding you through the process. Cool.
Right.
Yes. Is there anything? Because I think we can conclude this podcast. Is there anything important or relevant you would like to give our listeners or viewers as a message they could use and apply in their work, or if they're on C-level, how to view these kind of projects? Like something short and compact.
Yeah. No, I think the main thing for me at least would be that to make sure that your technology works in an omni-channel environment. So don't actually build everything per channel, because that's not an efficient way, also not in the long term, and companies might actually lose a lot of money because of that. So that's yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Ian, you?
I think you have a good look at how mature your organization is in terms of adopting this, and don't see this as a sort of a one-off thing, but it's one of the most important functions that your organization has, obviously, the customer contact. So it's worth investing in that and making sure that the customers have the best experience possible with the least burden on your back office.
Listening to this, you're also saying that please use this or put it in your strategy and in your roadmap of your strategy and
definitely.
your yearly plans to have this as a continuous process of improvement.
Yeah, and I hesitate to make the commercial pitch, but we also have the voice of maturity assessment that people can do via our website.
I'll grant you this one. Usually we don't edit, but this one, no, I'm just we'll leave it in. Okay, guys, I really want to thank you for being here. And before you said challenge accepted, I truly mean that. Please come, if I can help to get some A/B testing. I'd love to see the results. I think the market needs it, and especially the customers, because there'll be less illusions and or disillusions actually. If someone looks for you guys, where can they find you?
Well, we're in Zeist.
They're not going to drive Holland finding you.
And it's result@y.digital. That's our email address. Yeah.
And the site is y.digital. So no .nl or whatever. So y.digital.
And otherwise, Ian Fitzpatrick on LinkedIn and Carla Verwijmeren on LinkedIn as well.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you guys. You can find our podcast, of course, on LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, well, I'll put little posts on LinkedIn, on Spotify, and you can view everything on YouTube. Thank you very, very much.